The Omni-Commerce Nexus hung suspended in the violet-tinged orbit of Zenthar 9, a glittering monstrosity of crystalline spires and humming data conduits. Its architecture so pristine, it looked less like a space station and more like a mathematical theorem given physical form. The gas giant's swirling storms cast shifting reflections across the station's diamond-hard surfaces, as if the universe itself were trying and failing to mar its perfection. Inside, the biennial Galactic Trade Summit was in full swing. Merchant guilds from 100 species milled through the vaulted halls, their movements precise, their transactions colder than the void outside. At the center of it all stood the Vextari Consortium, their four arms moving in synchronized efficiency as they adjusted holographic trade matrices with the ease of deities sculpting reality. Their chitinous exoskeletons gleamed under the artificial light, each segment polished to a mirror sheen, a not-so-subtle reminder that they were the architects of interstellar commerce, the unassailable masters of the Universal Exchange Matrix, UEM. The UEM was their crowning achievement, a flawless algorithmic pricing system that eliminated the barbaric inefficiencies of negotiation. No haggling, no bluffing, just cold, immutable numbers. To the Vextari, it was the pinnacle of civilization. To the humans about to crash their party, it was a challenge. The Terran delegation arrived late, not fashionably late, aggressively late. Their shuttle, a patched-together diplomatic vessel with scorch marks still visible from some long-forgotten smuggling run, docked with all the grace of a drunken asteroid. The Vextari attendants recoiled as the airlock hissed open, releasing a wave of human smells, synthetic leather, stale coffee, and something suspiciously like chili powder. Leading the charge was Dr. Elias Carter, a man whose diplomatic credentials were as dubious as his poker face was impeccable. He strode into the hall with the casual swagger of someone who had spent more time in back-alley deals than boardroom negotiations, his sharp gray eyes already scanning the room for weaknesses. Behind him trailed his team, Lyra Vex, a smuggler with a knack for creative accounting, and Bargain, Bot, a sarcastic AI housed in a dented chrome sphere that kept muttering exchange rate calculations under its breath like a gambler counting cards. "Ah, the humans," intoned High Merchant Zyx 4, his vocal cords vibrating with the kind of disdain usually reserved for mold spores. "How quaint that you've joined us." Elias flashed a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Wouldn't miss it for the world. Or the galaxy, I suppose." Zyx 4's antennae twitched. "Your species has been granted provisional participation status due to your developing economy. You will adhere to the UEM. No deviations, no haggling." He spat the last word like a curse. Elias nodded solemnly, then leaned toward Lyra and whispered just loud enough to carry, "They're scared of us." Lyra snorted. "Of what? Our charm?" "No," Elias murmured, watching as a group of Krethian merchants, squid-like beings with a reputation for underhanded deals, eyed the humans with sudden interest. Of what happens when someone realizes their perfect system has a price tag-shaped hole in it. The summit's opening ceremony was a spectacle of sterile grandeur. Holographic projections displayed the UEM's latest fair and balanced trade rates, each digit glowing with self-satisfied certainty. The Vextari extolled the virtues of their system, their voices dripping with the serene confidence of a species that had never once been told no. Then came the first offer to Earth, a pittance of outdated tech in exchange for exclusive mining rights to the planet's rare minerals. Elias didn't even blink. "Fascinating," he said, tapping his chin. "Just to clarify, this rate is non-negotiable?" Zyx 4's mandibles clicked in amusement. "The UEM does not negotiate. It calculates." Elias hummed, then turned to Bargain Bot. Run the numbers, would you? The AI whirred. Calculating. Oh dear. Lyra smirked. That bad? Let's just say if this were a human deal, someone would be getting stabbed. Elias sighed, shaking his head with theatrical disappointment. Such a shame. And here I was hoping to discuss alternative arrangements. A ripple passed through the crowd. No one discussed the UEM. It was law. It was sacred. A Krethian merchant slithered closer, one tentacle discreetly extending a data chip to Lyra. He palmed it without breaking eye contact with the Vextari. The first crack in the algorithm had begun. The Omni-Commerce Nexus hummed with the sterile efficiency of 1,000 transactions processed per second. Holographic price matrices flickered above each merchant's booth, their values dictated by the Universal Exchange Matrix, absolute, unyielding, and, as Elias Carter was beginning to suspect, deeply flawed. He leaned against a crystalline railing, watching the Vextari delegation with the detached amusement of a chess player spotting a weak opening. Their forearms moved in precise, synchronized gestures as they presented Earth's proposed trade package, 47,000 metric tons of rare earth minerals in exchange for third-generation plasma conduits, tech that had been obsolete in the Orion Arm for at least a decade. Generous terms, droned High Merchant Vexus, their chitinous face betraying nothing. The UEM has calculated this exchange to a 0.003% margin of fairness. Elias sipped his drink, something blue and faintly electric, and let the silence stretch just a beat too long. Fascinating, he said finally. Though I am curious, how does the UEM account for sentimental value? A ripple passed through the assembled delegates. The Krethian merchant beside him, a coiled mass of iridescent tentacles, emitted a sound like bubbles popping in syrup. Laughter. Vex's antennae twitched. Sentiment is irrelevant. The Matrix operates on quantifiable data. Ah! Elias nodded sagely. So if I were to say, this, he tapped his wrist display, projecting a hologram of Earth's cerulean spires, jagged mineral formations unique to the Andes. Well, has been the site of human spiritual pilgrimages for centuries. The UEM wouldn't adjust its valuation? Vexus hesitated. The Krethian leaned in, their voice a whisper only Elias could hear. They always inflate by 12%. Always. Elias' grin was a knife sliding free of its sheath. Fascinating, he announced, loud enough to draw stares from 3 nearby guilds. So by the UEM's exact calculations, he tapped his display again, pulling up the Vextar's own pricing algorithm. These obsolete plasma conduits should be valued at 12% less than you're offering, then chaos. A Gorvian delegate, their fur bristling with outrage, slammed a clawed fist on the table. You dare manipulate the Matrix? Vex's exoskeleton darkened. This is a misinterpretation, but Elias was already turning to the Krethian, pitching his voice just shy of theatrical. Unless the UEM does account for cultural bias, in which case our minerals should be valued higher. A Yilkor envoy hissed, well off for 4th-gen conduits for those minerals. Vex's voice cracked like splitting chitin. The UEM is not a bargaining tool. Elias blinked, all faux innocence. Of course not. We're just clarifying. Across the room, Lyra Vex, former smuggler, current accountant, watched the fray with a smirk. The data chip the Krethian had slipped her burned a hole in her pocket. She caught Elias' eye and mouthed, "You're insane." A new voice, colder than the void between stars. "Explain this disruption." Executor Drell. The Vextaris enforcer loomed over the crowd, his carapace gleaming like polished obsidian. The room froze. Elias didn't flinch. Ah, Executor. Perfect timing. We were just admiring the UEM's flexibility. Drell's 4 eyes narrowed. The Matrix does not flex. Really? Elias tilted his head, because it seems to bend quite a bit when it benefits the Vextari. A gasp. A real one. Drell's claws flexed. You accuse us? Elias spread his hands. I observe. For example, he flicked the hologram again, pulling up a trade log. The Gorvians paid 22% more for anti-grav tech last cycle. Odd, given the UEM's perfect calculations. The Gorvian delegate roared. The summit's pristine order shattered like glass. Humans don't follow the rules. The Matrix can be broken. They negotiate. And beneath it all, Elias Carter, black market diplomat, professional thorn in the side of empires, smiled. The first crack in the algorithm had begun. The whispers from the summit's grand hall followed Elias Carter like a shadow as he slipped through the Omni-Commerce Nexus' less polished corridors. The station's underbelly was a far cry from the crystalline opulence above. Here, the walls hummed with the static of jury-rigged power conduits, and the air smelled of ozone and something suspiciously like smuggled spices. Lyra Vex, his smuggler-turned-accountant, materialized beside him, her grin sharp enough to cut through Durasteel. You got that look, she murmured. The one that says you're about to make someone very upset. Elias adjusted his sleeve where a tiny sarcastic AI named BargainBot whirred softly. Upset is such a strong word. I prefer economically inconvenienced. Their destination, the Bazaar of Shadows, an open secret among the guilds. Officially, it didn't exist. Unofficially, it was where the real deals happened, away from the Vexthari's prying eyes and their precious universal exchange matrix. The bazaar was a symphony of controlled chaos. Gorvian fur traders haggled with Crethian tech brokers over shimmering holograms of contraband. A Zenthari merchant, all 6 limbs waving, argued with a cloaked figure over what looked suspiciously like a crate of earth whiskey. Elias' fingers twitched. Opportunity. Bargain. Bot pinged in his ear. Analysis. Prices here fluctuate 23% outside UEM parameters. Also, someone is selling what appears to be a stolen Vextari tax ledger. Charming. Lyra snorted. Bet you 5 credits the Vextari don't know half their guilds are this deep in the black market. Elias didn't answer. His attention was locked on a hulking Gorvian in the corner, his fur matted with what might have been engine grease or blood. The alien's 4 eyes burned with a bitterness Elias recognized. Someone who'd been cheated. He slid onto the bench opposite the Gorvian. Rough summit? The alien's growl rattled the table. Their matrix claimed our ore was standard grade, sold it back to us as premium at triple cost. We mined our own planet into dust paying their tariffs. Elias leaned in. And if I told you their perfect system is rigged, the Gorvian's claws flexed. I'd say you're either a liar or the first honest human I've met. 2 hours later, Elias had a data chip full of damning transactions, proof the Vextari adjusted the UEM to exploit weaker species. Lyra whistled. This is enough to start a war, or a revolution, Elias corrected. BargainBot chimed. Incoming, Vextari Enforcer. Designation, Executor Drell. Threat level, extremely humorless. Elias didn't turn. He didn't need to. The bazaar's ambient noise had shifted, a ripple of tension as the crowd parted for the towering arthropod in gleaming silver robes. Drell's 4 arms were folded in what passed for Vextari impatience. Human Carter, Drell intoned, you are observed. Lyra, ever the distraction, chose that moment to trip, sending a glass of something neon purple cascading over Drell's pristine robes. The Enforcer's exoskeleton clicked in outrage. Oh stars, Lyra gasped, not sounding sorry at all. Your ceremonial dignity, it's ruined. Drell's mandibles quivered. Elias seized the moment. Executor, my associate is terribly clumsy. Perhaps you'd like to freshen up? The enforcer hesitated. The bazaar held its breath. This is not over, Drell hissed, stalking away. The tension didn't lift. If anything, it coiled tighter. Graphs spiraled, showing how the Vextaris fare. Rates shifted the moment a species couldn't fight back. Lyra exhaled. So what's the play? Leak this? Burn the summit down? Elias tapped the chip. Better. We use their system against them. He grinned. Tomorrow, I'm going to ask for a cultural exemption. Bargain. Bot sighed. Translation. You're about to break the galaxy's economy again. Outside, the station's artificial stars flickered. Somewhere, the Vextari were recalculating. Somewhere, the cracks widened. The Omni-Commerce Nexus hummed with the sterile efficiency of 1,000 automated transactions, its crystalline walls reflecting the cold blue glow of the UEM central display. Elias Carter stood at the center of the Grand Exchange Chamber, his hands clasped behind his back, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Around him, the Vextari delegates, towering four-armed arthropods with chitinous faces unreadable as stone, adjusted their datapads with mechanical precision. Executor Drell loomed at the edge of the chamber, his faceted eyes tracking Elias like a predator sizing up prey. Your request for a cultural exemption is irregular, Drell intoned, his voice a grating blend of binary clicks and synthesized galactic standard. The universal exchange matrix accounts for all variables. There is no need for haggling. Elias spread his hands in mock innocence. Ah, but you see, exalted executor, on Earth, commerce is as much an art as a science. To deny us our traditions would be like forbidding the Krethians from ink-writing their contracts. A nearby Krethian merchant, their tentacles coiled in amusement, let out a burble of agreement. The lead Vextari negotiator, High Arbiter Vexus, tapped a claw against the podium. Very well. A trial then. One human artifact auctioned under your primitive customs alongside its UEM valuation. Let us see which system prevails. Elias bowed, generous as always. He turned to his team. Lyra Vex, her fingers already dancing over a smuggled holo projector, winked. Bargain Bot, hovering at his shoulder, muttered, I've run the numbers. We lose by 78.3%. This is idiocy. Elias patted the AI's casing. That's because you're calculating fair prices. The artifact was a vintage 21st century coffee maker, scuffed and missing its carafe, procured from a junk dealer on Mars. Elias held it aloft like a holy relic. Behold, a treasure of Earth's golden age of caffeine, hand-forged by the artisans of Starbucks Prime. The chamber erupted in murmurs. The UEM screen flickered, assigning it a value of 12 galactic credits, barely the price of a nutrient paste packet. Elias clutched his chest. 12? Exalted ones, this machine once brewed the elixir that powered the signing of the Soul-Free Trade Accords. A sacred artifact. A Gorvian trader, their fur bristling with skepticism, grunted. Prove its worth! Elias grinned. Gladly. He tapped the coffee maker's rusted button. It sputtered, coughed, then emitted a pathetic drip of black sludge into a cup Lyra had produced. The Krethians recoiled, then leaned in, intrigued. The Gorvians sniffed. A nervous Vextari clerk whispered, It violates 14 health codes, 15 credits. A human delegate shouted from the back. Elias gasped. A bold opening, but surely this relic is worth 20. A Krethian tentacle twitched. 22. The UEM screen glitched, recalculating. Then the chaos began. A Gorvian slammed a fist on the table. 25, and I throw in a complimentary asteroid mining permit. Lyra Fake swooned. Oh, but I was going to offer 30, and my cousin's docking bay on Titan. The bids spiraled. Humans theatrically gasped, clutched pearls, staged walkouts only to, reluctantly, return. A meek-looking botanist from Europa burst into tears over losing Grandma's dream. Elias whispered to a confused Vexthari clerk, "It's called emotional leverage. You should try it." The UEM's display fizzed, numbers stuttering. 42 credits, 58, 75. Executor Dral's claws twitched toward his disruptor. "This is not commerce. This is chaos," Elias shrugged. "No, Exalted One, this is fun." The final bid came from a Crothian spice lord who slammed down a pouch of iridescent gems. 100 credits, and my private moon's harvest rights. The UEM screen flickered, then died with a pathetic blip. The coffee maker sold for triple its UEM value. The chamber buzzed. Delegates whispered, claws and tentacles gesturing at the broken screen. The Gorvians exchanged glances. If humans could break the UEM, so could they. High Arbiter Vex's voice was brittle. "A fluke. The Matrix merely requires recalibration." Elias wiped an imaginary tear. "Of course, but perhaps, just perhaps, the galaxy's trade could use a little human touch?" Executor Dral stepped forward, his carapace vibrating with fury. "Enough. This farce proves nothing but your species' disregard for order." Elias met his gaze. "Or maybe it proves your order was never fair to begin with." A Crethian merchant let out a low, approving whistle. The Gorvians rumbled agreement. Somewhere in the station's depths, 100 black market deals were being renegotiated, and the cracks in the Vexthari's empire widened. Executor Dral's chitinous limbs clicked against the crystalline floor as he advanced, his four eyes burning with cold fury. The summit chamber, once a pristine monument to Vexthari economic dominance, now thrummed with the electric tension of a rebellion in its infancy. "You have tainted this summit with your primitive theatrics," Dral hissed, mandibles quivering. His ceremonial robes, still damp from Lyra's accidental drink spill, clung to his carapace, undermining his usual aura of menace. "The universal exchange matrix is law. To disrupt it is sabotage." Elias Carter didn't flinch. He leaned against the auction podium, arms crossed, the ghost of a smirk playing on his lips. "Funny. I thought trade was about mutual benefit, not blind obedience." Around them, the crowd had fractured. The Gorvians, massive and furred, loomed like living mountains at Elias' back, their low growls vibrating through the floor. The Crethians' tentacles twitched in barely suppressed glee, their ink-dark eyes darting between Dral and the human. Even the lesser merchant guilds, species long ground under the Vextharis heel, edged closer, smelling blood in the water. Dral's antennae flicked toward the security drones hovering at the chamber's perimeter. "By the authority of the consortium, I declare this human delegation personae non gratae. You will be detained pending." "Oh, please." Lyra Vex stepped forward, her boots clicking sharply. The former smuggler had one hand resting on her hip, the other twirling a data chip between her fingers. "Before you start throwing around arrests, maybe explain this." She tossed the chip to a nearby holographic projector. The air above the podium shimmered. Footage unfolded. Vexthari merchants in shadowed alcoves, adjusting UEM rates in real time, whispering deals that bled dry entire systems. A Gorvian voice, raw with betrayal, hissed from the recording. "They take our ores for half value, then sell them back as processed goods at triple markup." The chamber erupted. Dral's exoskeleton flushed a sickly violet, the Vexthari equivalent of paling. "This is fabricated. Funny how truth sounds like lies to liars." "Bargain." Bot chirped from Elias' wrist terminal. The AI's holographic avatar, a miniature grinning merchant, projected a second stream of data. Transaction logs, black market ledgers, all pointing to one irrefutable conclusion. The UEM wasn't just flawed, it was rigged. A Crethian merchant, her tentacles coiled in delight, slithered forward. "The consortium's fair trade seems to have quite the Creative accounting. Drell's claws flexed. He had one move left. Very well. His voice was a blade of ice. If Earth rejects the UEM, Earth shall be excluded from it. A full trade embargo. No deals, no shipments, no protection. He bared his mandibles in something approximating a smile. Let us see how long your haggling sustains you when the galaxy turns its back. Then Elias laughed. It wasn't a polite chuckle. It was a full-bodied, knee-slapping roar of delight that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Even Drell recoiled. Oh, Drell. Elias wiped a tear from his eye. You really don't know humans, do you? He spread his hands. Embargoes? Blacklists? Please. Half our economy runs on spite and back-alley deals. He turned to the crowd. Who here's ever bought something off the books because the official price was a scam? A forest of limbs, tentacles, claws, gripper tendrils rose. Elias grinned. Welcome to the real free market. The station's economy unraveled in minutes. Gorvian miners canceled their ore contracts. Krethian smugglers rerouted shipments to alternative channels. Even the Vextharos' own merchant subguilds, sensing the shift, began whispering with rivals. The UEM's holographic displays flickered, then died, overloaded by 1,000 manual overrides. Drell watched, rigid with horror, as centuries of control crumbled into chaos. Into humanity's chaos. And in the shadows, unnoticed, Lyra Vex slipped a vintage coffee maker into her bag, for sentimental reasons. The Omnicommerce Nexus had never known such beautiful, undignified chaos. Executor Drell's mandibles twitched in a spasm of pure, algorithmic horror as the summit's grand hall devolved into a scene that would haunt the Vexthari Consortium for centuries. Holographic price projections flickered like dying stars, their rigid calculations overwritten by human hands, hands that scribbled numbers on napkins, hands that clasped wrists in secret deals, hands that gestured wildly in the universal language of, I know what you're really offering. Elias Carter leaned against the now useless UEM terminal, arms crossed, watching the galaxy's most powerful merchants do something unprecedented, improvise. Elias grinned, and nearby, a Gorvian merchant, their carapace still streaked with the ceremonial ink of bankruptcy, was loudly renegotiating a contract with a Krethian subguild, their tentacles gesturing in a mimicry of human haggling. No, your last offer insults us both. Look, half the antimatter plus a favor. The Krethian hissed, then laughed, a sound like bubbles popping in tar. A favor? What is this? A back-alley deal on Earth? Crest's voice cut through the din, sharp as a plasma blade. This is anarchy! Crest dawned, eyebrows raised. This is commerce. He gestured to the room. Look at them, they're happy. All's TPS. They were. And they were. The rigid tiers of the UEM had collapsed into a vibrant, shouting, living marketplace. A Vexthari subguild merchant, their own kind, was even now arguing with a Nixian gem trader over the price of Earth's sacred relic, coffee maker, which Lyra had mysteriously produced from her bag. You said it was priceless, the Nixian protested. Lyra shrugged. It is, but I'm feeling generous. Drell's 4 hands clenched. You've destroyed order. A hush fell as the Vexthari High Merchant, a towering arthropod clad in iridescent negotiation robes, descended from the upper galleries. The crowd parted like a tide before a ship. Drell stiffened, but the UEM, Elias gave a shallow bow, guilty. The High Merchant studied him. For now, murmurs rippled through the crowd. A new system will be devised, one that accounts for variables. Their gaze lingered on Elias, such as human negotiation tactics. Elias smirked. Good luck coding that. Good luck coding that. The Omnicommerce Nexus still orbited Xanthar 9, but it was no longer the same sterile monument to Vextari control. The halls buzzed with hybrid deals, part algorithm, part haggling. The Bazaar of Shadows had gone legit, its backroom deals now just room deals. Elias stood at the observation deck, watching the gas giant storm swirl. Elias laughed. Bargain, bot piped up. Historical footnote: this is the first time in galactic history a developing economy has developed an entire trade revolution. Lyra clinked hers against his. Cheers to that. Outside, the stars burned on, indifferent. But somewhere in the vast, bureaucratic machine of the galaxy, a single line of code had been rewritten. Never underestimate a species that bargains.